What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. A buddy of mine sent me this inflation chart, which I thought was pretty cool. I'm going to throw it up on the screen here. It's not like a perfect chart. It is cited on where it comes from. It comes from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. I don't necessarily trust these people, but we can work with it. We'll work with it. But I think it's interesting citing the inflation. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it up on the screen here, kind of do some voiceover, and you can look at it and see what I'm looking at. So boom. All right. So now that we've got it up here, we've got the gasoline, which is not included in the CPI. The CPI, we call it the CPI lie, but it's consumer price index. It's theoretically a basket of different items that is supposed to measure the rate of inflation. The catch is that they changed this basket, so it's not the same way that they used to measure it in the 70s. So if we measured these prices based on the old way of doing it, we would have already at 15% inflation in North America. But nonetheless, let's just use it how they say it. They say it's like 7 or 8% right now. Gasoline, however, is not included in that, and it's the largest one. It's up almost 50%. The second one is used cars and trucks. Third is utility, like piped gas service. Then it's meat and poultry, fish, like, animal products, let's put it that way. Then it's new vehicles. Then it's your sin stuff, like your tobacco and smoking products. And then it's just got like a random, like all items at 7%. It's blue, kind of weird. And then you've got like food at home, which is 6%. I don't know. The food I buy is a lot more than that. Electricity, I don't know. Like I haven't really paid attention to that one too much. It's kind of fixed in many ways. And then, everything else kind of they're basically claiming is below the level of inflation. So food away from home, like going to Taco Bell or something like that and whatever. And then, of course, at the very, very bottom, medical care commodities, like very low. Airline fares only up 1.4%, which I think is interesting because gasoline is one of their biggest costs, or fuel rather. So I don't know how that's possible, but they did get $50 billion from the U.S. government. Your buddy Donald Trump gave them that. So it's an interesting thing. So kind of like coming back over here, top of that is literally gas, used cars, and meats. Like that's like the top of this thing. If you look at Googling around and looking at Agenda 30, I would encourage you just to scan it. Okay, not like it's just big conspiracy theory, man, and you're gonna live in the pod and eat the bugs. But they are telling you, the people that wrote this, literally have a line. It's like, by 2030, you will own nothing and you will be happy. And you will live in the pod and eat the bugs. They're probably not wrong. One of the takeaways, the themes that is throughout Agenda 30, if you read it, take a few nights and do it. It's a long document. It's over 300 pages. But you can scan through it. And a lot of it's fluff and made to like be confusing, but really you can read the headline titles in it and be like, okay, I see what's going on. Ultimately, here's the game. Carbon is the devil. And so carbon is like this big, like, we must stop carbon. Now, the people writing this fly in private aircraft, but carbon is so their carbon footprint is like this. Your carbon footprint is like this, and I agree, like, maybe we should be very conscious. We want to be conscious. We want to be conscious of our externalities to the planet. I'm a huge hippie. That's why I do what I do. Right, I do like selective land clearing and forestry mulching stuff, and then I do like food forest stuff, and I'm into compost. Like I get it. Like I do biodiesel. Like I'm in it. Like, but there is a point where you want to increase the living standards of human life. That is not Agenda 30. Agenda 30 is this big control goal of controlling people in the name of climate change or environmentalism. It really pisses me off because it's like, you guys are not environmentalists. You don't give a shit about being environmentalists. You just want to control tons and tons of people. I was forced to read Agenda 21 when I was in college. So to graduate college, I had to read, every person at my school, Florida Gulf Coast University, had to read Agenda 21 to take a test on it to pass a class called colloquium. And it was a requirement. Like every single major had to take it. It was the only class that was like that. And I kind of laughed at it. I was like, yeah, it's kind of like, carbon tax credits and things like that. I was like, yeah, okay, maybe there's some opportunity there, but like it's going to require a big coordinated global effort of global governance to pull this off. And nonetheless, it turns out all the global governments, or all the governments, are essentially, like they're NATO, right? Like they do have global governance. And a few of those governments are outside of that NATO, like a few of them are. But like ultimately, they're all basically working together, flat tax throughout the entire globe, all that stuff. I think it's important if you look at the top of that graph, maybe you'll throw it back up, and you look at the top of this graph and you see it's all the stuff they don't want you to do. Like, they literally don't want you to have cars. By 2030, there's no need for you to own your own car, right? Is ideally you move more to like a city-like setting, or you have electric buses, or maybe if you're well-to-do, wealthier, maybe you have one electric car. And so that electric car, is probably not going to take you to areas of concern. Let's say like maybe a protest or somewhere where, that day is a red-lined area. And you can do this. You can turn cars on and off easier if they're electric. You can still do this with gasoline cars, but controlling an electric car is much, much easier. That's why you can have self-driving electric cars that don't fully work yet, but you can have self-driving electrical things much easier than you can with gasoline because the inputs lag. So, your throttle response and things like that, it's just going to be harder to have self-driving, combustion engine type of vehicles. But nonetheless, like on that chart, you've got used car prices. Well, that's the whole thing. It's like you can take off the top of that if you stop using gasoline and stop buying cars, right? If you go down a little bit more, like your utility services, your gas services, okay, your meats, that's also a thing that's in Agenda 30. They don't want a world of meat. And when I say they, it's global elite, like the big thinkers of the world, your Bill Gateses of the world, your doctor, those guys. Like these guys are basically saying like, oh, well, the world will be a better place if this, and that. What you can do to maintain your lifestyle or expand your lifestyle. I don't like the scarcity mindset. I'd rather be in the place of like offense rather than defense. But I think that you do have to start managing your life around this Agenda 30, or at least preparing for what inevitably is going to come. It's kind of terrifying to look back at the last 2 years and to see how many people were told to do something that was an experiment. That you knew from the beginning didn't feel right. You're like, this isn't, normally takes 7 or 10 years to develop this type of drugs. We don't know what side effects are. And everyone's like, just take it, man. It's your duty, bro. And so, Jordan Peterson has this great line where I never understood it. And I heard it in 2016. And he said, when the Nazis come, there's a 98% statistical probability that you'll be one of them. And I was like, no way, dude. Like, but he was talking about mass psychosis. Basically, like, how do you have an entire culture just go one way? I mean, 98% of them just go one way. Well, it becomes like groupthink. It becomes like, well, your neighbor's doing it. And then it becomes like the last guys, like the holdouts, the people who are like, wait a second, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't, like, something's not right here. Well, like, everyone around them has turned. And so at that point in time, the only thing you can do is separate yourself. And that's why we're seeing like this state migration where people are starting to sort themselves into like red areas, blue areas. They're starting to sort themselves into like the country or the city. I know people that are like, I've got a younger brother, like he's in the city. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, it's fun and everything's cool. And I'm like, all right, man, like, not where I want to be. Why you've got all this chaos and stuff like that and supply chain shortages. Like, I'm not trying to be stuck in a city anywhere. Be aware of this. And you have to do what you can do to put yourself in a place of sovereignty and strength. And ultimately, this is why I chose to do the homestead route. This is why I built a tiny house, I rented land, I then bought land, I moved the tiny house out to the land, I started to build a big house, I started to build a food forest, all that type of stuff, to where it's like I can have some independence over my food supply. If there are lockdowns and stuff, I've got like my own acreage to hang out on. I can like do whatever I want. I can do archery, I can shoot guns, I can do whatever I want to do. I can have animals. All that stuff. I can produce my own power, I can work on projects, I can build additional barns if I can do all that stuff. And I know that that's not an option for everybody, but it is more of an option than most people think, where you can partner up. I just had 2 buddies over here for dinner last night, and we're looking at land for them. Like they're looking for 5 acres here, 10 acres there. I found a piece of land that's 100 acres. I'm like, yo, what about this? Or like, yo, it's expensive. I'm like, no, it's not. We just need more people to divide this out. I'm actually like, I've always wanted to be in real estate development, and I'm seeing an opportunity where a lot of people are like, Trav, I don't really want 6 or 10 acres, but like, I definitely want 2. And I'm like, it doesn't really exist anywhere. Your options are 100 or 5. But I'm seeing an opportunity in buying 100 and chopping it into 2 and putting in main roads and like, main utilities, but like not traditional neighborhoods. Like here, you take 100 acres, you slam 8 houses on an acre. But I don't think that that's where the market's headed, especially for the younger generations. I'm seeing, this trend where people do want to have like multi-generations out there. Like you have a mother-in-law suite, so you got some like elderly people, you know, you don't have to worry about sending them out to the nursing home or whatever. You've got like kids maybe they haven't left home yet, but they're, you know, like I think that the entire way that we've built society over the last 50 years has really been great for the banking elite, where it's like, oh, you're 18, you need to be out of mom and dad's. And I kind of agree with that. If you're a guy, you know, you're 19, 20, you need to be getting out. But it's really great for those that are like in the mortgage business, because now you've got 3 generations of people paying 3 different mortgages rather than just like an estate that you pay one on or don't have it at all. So I just think that you need to look at this agenda, and you need to look at the key parts that are being affected by inflation. And you have to say like, okay, the agenda is working here, right? It's definitely happening here. And it's by design. And I'm not saying you got to go out right now and get a car that won't be tracked and all that stuff, but you need to consider like the rise in used truck prices. Are we seeing that as a temporary thing, or is that a permanent thing? You know, will you ever be able to find 5.9 Cumminses again? Or, you know, like how long will you own those things? You know, 7.3s, you know, all that type of stuff, where it's like, you know, it gives you some independence, and getting like some of that old school tech, I think is, without going down the rabbit hole here, like I think is super necessary. Is super necessary if you want to have any freedom moving forward. And I don't think that the global elite are going to be successful in pulling this off, but I do think that they're going to be very successful in causing like an absolute shitstorm of chaos and supply chain collapses and famines in certain areas. And I definitely think that they're going to be very successful in centrally planning a world that gets very ridiculous. But I think that the solution to that is more people help them gain their independence, get them out of a debt-based monetary system, get them into real things, like real things they hold. I don't care if it's crypto or metals. And if you're interested in metals, I'm a broker for metals. I can help you get metals. I can beat most prices, like JM Bullion prices. I can always beat them like $1 an ounce on silver and stuff. But like those are, you know, options out of this old fiat system. Getting out on homesteads. I think a lot of you guys in this audience are exterior contractors. If you can start helping people build their own gardens, if you can start taking in like wood chips and start composting that stuff, there's going to be a good demand in that for the next 15 or 20 years. And so if it's possible for you to do that, I would encourage you to do that, because I think that it's the right thing to do. It's got a demand curve coming behind it. I think it's going to be necessary for our society moving forward, that we're going to be like, you know, quote, more off-grid, more independent. There's a lot of opportunity just in restoring older vehicles. Like I am interested in like buying a $50,000 7.3 all day long. I go and look at these new Platinums, you know, whatever, these new 250s with depth fluid, and they're like 85 grand. I'm interested in the $55,000, like brand new 7.3, just been rebuilt, put in there, manual transmission, roll up windows, beautiful paint. Like that's what I'm interested in. And I think other people are too. I know, actually follow a guy named Matt Smith. He just bought like a 1955 pickup truck. He's like, there's nothing on this thing I can't work on myself. And it's obviously mint and gorgeous. I think that we're moving to that kind of like that meta-modernism where this is going to be a big trend. And I think that that's going to be super healing, where we're going to have a society where a lot of multiple cash flows start to come from one household instead of one or two. Like my buddy, he like has like a trucking broker business. He also does honey, and he does it like with a brand and a website and everything. He's got like a food forest where he like produces food crops. Another year or two, he'll be at farmers markets and all that stuff. Like he'll be, you know, and so it's not like his main business, but it's like a supplement to all the other things he had, and his children are involved in it and everything. So I think that we're moving there. And I think serving any of those parts of the economy, I mean, just as the dollar continues to fall in value, and we're seeing the dollar fall in value like rapidly, eventually all of the dollars that are around the world have to come back home. And that's one thing that we even dove into on this channel, but that's why you'll get like this, like at the very end, you'll get like this crack up boom where all these dollars have to come back and be reshored. Like if you buy some Chinese goods and you give them dollars for it, well, they have a surplus of dollars. And so it's not a trade deficit, it's a capital surplus account. And so what occurs is they've got to go get a return, or they got to go buy something. And so that money comes back and they buy like Facebook stock or Amazon stock or whatever. And so we see those things continually pump. And And we're like, oh, everything's great, everything's awesome. Like, really what's happening is like we're importing their goods, we're offshoring out our capital, and a lot of that is debt-based capital, and then they're repurchasing our assets with it. And so eventually everything that's been created, all these dollars that have been created, will come home. And so you're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars that will flood the system, that will already be on life support, and then we're flooding our own system as it is. So at the end, you end up with like a super weak dollar, which essentially means like you're not getting a $2 avocado from Mexico because it's not gonna balance. So you're not gonna import mangoes from Brazil or wherever they may come from. You're gonna grow them here. You're going to grow like whatever can grow here. It's going to make sense because you don't have the shipping costs, you don't have the inflation of the food and energy cost, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's just going to make economic sense to start to produce things here. And at some point in time, we will have to reshore our economy, meaning we will have to pull everything back on shore and we'll have to start to build stuff here again. And it's not happening this year. But I am saying that a lot of these things that you can look at and you can see these big, massive trends and you can get involved in these trends, which will help you build wealth, which I really genuinely think is the only way you can have freedom moving forward here, is you've got to build an element of wealth where you can sidestep needing to play by their rules, let's say, where you can do your own thing because you don't have to go take some medical whatever because you don't need that job. You got your own job. You create jobs. You've got skills where you can go anywhere. You are your own business. Any of that stuff. It gives you these elements of freedom where some bully can't just bully you into their new world order. And I do think that they are going to fail. And I think that they are going to fail spectacularly. But before they do, I have no doubt that they can do a lot of interesting things. Like my buddies, and we'll wrap with this, like my buddies in New York, like they're literally voting on, can you have a wood burning gas stove? Or no, gas stoves are banned, but can you have a wood burning stove? And no, in the name of carbon. And it's like, they want you on an electrical system. How are they going to make the electricity? I have no idea. I know they're piping it in from Canada using the railroad system, the railroad tracks. They're building cable lines down them. But ultimately, they're creating the society where you have to be plugged into it, literally, and you have to comply with it for your standard of living to just maintain where it was forever. And they're taking away that independence. Now, the only thing to do if you're in that area is get out. Like, that's it. Like, get out. And like my buddies over here the other night, both from New York. And it's like, that's the way that this is going for the moment. On the backside of this, I think that we're going to live in an amazing decentralized world with decentralized currencies and decentralized inputs. And I genuinely think that we're going to like produce things at smaller scales, but we're going to have like that manufacturing capability again. And I think that we will go into a golden age of humanity. But before we get there, we're in the 1920s and we're going to go through the 1930s. But this time they've got, door cameras and trackable iPhones and, all that stuff. And it's going to be weird. It's going to be a weird period of time. And hopefully they don't have to, bring on a war event. But when all else fails, they take you to war. Hopefully we can avoid that. Hopefully the people can be like, dude, we're done with that. We don't want to do that anymore. We've been doing that for like 30 years. That's what got us in all these problems. Longer than that. That's what got us here. But the way forward is going to be getting out of their system and doing what you can. And I would encourage you to read Agenda 30. Like, it's some dark shit. And I think that you should go read it. And you should be like, yeah, what's the probability they can pull any of this off? Probably higher than 1. Probably less than 100. But they're doing a pretty damn good job so far. And most of the people, 98% chance, they will beg for it. They will beg for it, especially when disaster comes, when crisis comes, when the causes and effects, when we start to see the effects of what they have done. And by they, I mean the governments of the world have done terrible, terrible things for the last 2 years. And we're going to see the effects of this in the next 2 or 3 years. And people are going to be like, how did we get here? Well, you and I know how we got here. But at that point in time, the story narrative will be different. And they will blame it on whatever group they're going after. They'll probably blame it on the independents, the people that want freedom. And that's why the only thing that you can do is really move to areas where other people believe in that and then wait it out. So anyway, guys, I appreciate you guys being here. Longer video. I know some of you guys like that. So I'll create some. Please share this with somebody that, like, hey, check out Trav stuff. Find one of my videos, send them a link. Just share it one person at a time. I really appreciate it. I'm not really on any social platforms besides the gram. And so there's no way to get this stuff out unless you guys, make this happen. So appreciate you guys liking, commenting below. and until next video.